and welcome back to WAAAGH Tactics. Today we're going to talk about the Bully Boyz. Now, the Bully Boyz were hit pretty hard going into Pariah Nexus, but there's still life in this detachment. Just know that Gork and Mork have not abandoned us. So today we're going to go over archetypes, stratagems, how to use them with the Bully Boyz units that are favored specifically, how to use some of the units that we prefer in Bully Boyz, hit some of the units and the list that we're going to love with them. So with that being said, let's go into the Bully Boyz. So before that, let's show today's sponsor, the Baron of Dice. The Baron of Dice have high quality dice and have helped us promote our paint competition. Please join it in the Discord. So Baron of Dice, thank you very much. They have a great textured finish to their dice. And with that being said, let's get back to the Bully Boyz. Now, the Bully Boyz are here to stay, guys. We should start with the archetypes. Now, when I say archetypes, it means a structure or framework, right, that you want to go into your list design. So when you're looking at this detachment, you then break it down to how do I want to run this detachment, as in what units will be favored and be kind of seen as the theme or the design as to what are the tools that you're trying to activate within this detachment to actually make it work and be in your favor. So we're going to start with something that I like to call, not innovated, but I like to call the pain wall, which is where you take your availability of 2 walls and stack it with your availability of a lot of feel no pains. So luckily orcs do have a good amount of feel no pains, and we have units that like to gain benefits from that. So as the wall is a obvious offensive buff, in this case it's our defensive backbone when you're running the pain wall. So not only are you killing your opponents, but you're allowing yourself to retain the clapback and get more value from your second wall with these units. So the pain wall is something that I really like to see. It feels very Bully Boy-ish as well, even though it's not the one we started off with, right, everybody? So then you have the Bully Tide. The Bully Tide is the Bully Boyz interpretation of running mobs of boys. So instead of a green tide, let's say that you're not really appreciating the green tide right now, or you're building up to the green tide and you still want to use a lot of boys. You have the characters building up for it too. The Bully Tide is a good way to just bring mobs of boys. It starts with just simply, we'll say 40, and then it goes up to 60, sometimes even 80, but 40 to 60 is generally the good one. Then we have the YOLO wall. The YOLO wall is pretty much where you just go into all pressure. That can be 30 commandos, Death Killer, Wartride, Zagrot, Wartsnagger, just all going on the line. It could be a spam truck support where you're just running a lot of knobs and running straight pressure at people with the killing potential of the Bully Boyz and really taking advantage of your advance in charge. All of these, archetypes can be based on how you build your list. And I suggest when you go into building your list, you start with thinking this way. Not that you have to stick to one of the archetypes I suggested, but that you think, what are the tools and everything that I need for this? As we go over the stratagems and the enhancements, keep these archetypes in line in the back of your mind. That way you can go, okay, I can see how these are stacking into what I'm trying to do here. And then finale, when we get to the list, and you can put it all together, and it should hopefully create one nice example of why the lists are made the way they are and how you should run them in the Bully Boyz. So going into stratagems, if you're looking at this slide, you can see that I clearly, next to the word stratagems, put core strats plus. If you're just listening, the reason I did this is because Bully Boyz, especially, right? Because for the most part, all orc detachments can be argued this, but for Bully Boyz especially, core game strats are very valuable, very useful, especially when you're looking at the archetypes that we spoke about that maybe don't rely heavily on mega knobs and knobs sometimes. That's why core strats come into play, because the strats you will find available to yourself will end up going into core strats. So if none of these seem to fit off the top of your head, some of the archetypes or units that we're going to talk about going into this, just know that core strats are also in the back of your mind whenever you're running a bully list. And there's specific reasons for that, right? And we'll talk about that when we talk about each specific unit and some of the lists. But right now, we're going to look at the core strats. So Bully Boyz are known for killing. What's interesting is that They also have good durability and clap back stratagems here. Not as good as Warhorde, but still pretty good. So we have arm to the teeth. What's interesting is in your shooting phase or the fight phase, right? So uh, you're not doing these and you're doing this at a specific time. Always know this activation really, really matters. What's I really wanted to point out, excuse me, is the targeting. So for all of these stratagems in the Bully Boyz detachment, which is also its weakness, is that it favors and specifically focuses on knobs and mega knobs. The fact that it's not war boss keyword is a big thing that we hope to change going forward. Future us, please let's make that happen. So when you're targeting only knobs and mega knobs that can do this, you're re-rolling hit rolls of one, but if it's on the wall, it's a full wound. Oh, sorry, hit reroll, full hit reroll. Why that's really good, in my opinion, especially in this detachment, is whenever people are looking at Nexus Bully Boyz now, they're saying, "Gosh, these units are highly expensive, really elite. I run out of stuff and activations, and they're really not as durable as they used to be." What makes it interesting is arm to the teeth specifically allows you to run something, let's say like a mega knob brick with no leader, knowing that you're still going to have a wall, you're going to have some durability increase from there, but it's not relying on that mega war boss to make you hit on threes, right? So you can still say, hey, I'm going to hit you with this unit on this side of the field with full rerolls on fours that have no character. That's very important and very circumstantial in that case, but outside of just simply running a big unit of knobs and having knobs hitting on threes, re-rolling the full hit roll. That's obviously really good too. But the backup to this going into Nexus is I don't need characters in some of these units. I can just run full re-rolls to hit. Another thing I like to talk about that is totally slept on is Pain Boys plus Snobs would take advantage of this strat as well, because it's Snobs and not Warboss specific. That means maybe your Knobs can take advantage of the 5-up Feel No Pain, the 5-up Invuln, but then they re-roll the entire hit roll, not caring that they're hitting on fours. So next we have Too Arrogant to Die. Too Arrogant to Die is when your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase, just after enemy unit has selected its targets. So sadly, a lot of new people will use this strat and go fight on death. That's how I use it, blah, blah, blah. And they're not going to care about when this is activated. It's activated when you're targeted. I know that sucks. It's not when you're already dead and you look back and you're like, all right, 9 out of my 10 knobs are dead. I'm going to use this strat. No. It's when you're targeted, boom, you pick the strat. So sometimes it's kind of crappy because you could survive the clapback, and then you also have to roll for the couple of dudes that did die, and then you might fail it. But it's still good. It's still an excellent strat. Fighting on death is really important for elite trades and melee and such. In Nexus, it's really important because that high pressure melee first impact wave style is happening all over the place, and orcs aren't necessarily the fastest, even with the advance and charge sometimes in Bully Boyz. Therefore, fighting at death is something you should always keep in your back pocket. Just keep in mind that outside of the wall, this is only going off on a 5+. So if it's on the wall, it's on a 3+, but outside of the wall, it's on a 5+. So don't let people do it to you outside of the 5+. It means outside the wall on a 3+, if you're in that mirror matchup, but you don't cheat as well as the orc player. Crushing Impact. So it's during your charge phase, just after a knobs unit or mega knobs unit has end its charge move. So luckily, it's once you've actually made it successfully, right? Not worded stupidly. That's knobs or mega knobs only. Select one enemy unit within engagement range. Roll a d6 for that unit. That's within engagement range on a 5+. The unit suffers immortal. If it's a WAAAGH, it's on a 4+ instead. That's pretty awesome. This is good for tearing down units that have reduced damage and lack feel no pains, of course. So that's Crushing Impact. A lot of the time it's really great for your knobs. Pretty straightforward on that one. It's circumstantially ideal, really good when you want to take some wounds off people that are too durable for your knobs to punch out. But a lot of the time you're going to use your strats on a lot of other things here. They're either specifically because you want to survive or because you're trying to get more volume into people. But there are circumstances where Crushing Impacts can make a huge difference. It's just that because you have to get essentially base to base with people, that first row of contact with them, it's harder to get enough bodies on it to make it worth its value, right? Next, we have Cut Them Down. Your opponent's movement phase, just after that unit has fallen back, select one knobs or mega knobs unit from your army within engagement range of that unit. Effect: when the enemy unit falls back, all models in engagement range must take a desperate escape test. When doing so, is activated on your units, make it subtract from a 1. Subtraction of 1. So that means this can go off on 3s, meaning people just straight up die. It's really, really good for, like we spoke about, when you have that stupid unit of Mega Knobs, for example, that ran off on its own. People aren't putting too many resources into it because it's not character led. They're not scared of it. Now that stupid Mega Knob unit's still alive, and you can cut them down on that unit. Your unit of knobs, if they have the pain boy involved in there, they can do that as well, because they can actually survive long enough for someone to have to fall back from them. So really cool. Circumstantially kills a lot of different units. That's been classic since before Nexus, so nothing too deep about that. Hulking Brutes. In your opponent's shooting phase, this is pretty much Armor of Contempt, but it's only in the shooting phase, and it's only for knobs and Mega Knobs. This is one of those strats that I'd really love if they, extended it to Squig Hog Boys, because they allowed it to be on War Boss units or something. This is a strat that I don't think is too OP, especially because it's only in range in the shooting phase, right? If it was in combat, okay, be real more restrictive, but GW should actually open this one up. That being said, the stack's really good with having cover already or going to ground, like we said with core strats prior, because you're really focusing on Mega Knobs here, and then even knobs, because a lot of the time once you ran off into hit something, you're kind of in the open. So going to ground becomes an actually interesting target. When I covered core strats in the core strats videos, Mega Knobs are one of the units I specifically said outside of Grots are good for going to ground. Hulking Brutes kind of goes with that. Makes you actually survive with something like the Pain Wall, which we spoke about earlier as an archetype. Then we have always looking for a fight. Fight phase, just after a unit is destroyed, mobs or Mega Knobs, they can consolidate up to D3 plus 3 instead of just 3, or outside of the wall, it's 6 instead. So you get more consolidation. Pretty straightforward. Nexus isn't bringing anything new about that. Next, we go into the enhancements, the teleporter. So the teleporter, to me, is the number one stratagem. Number one enhancement here. This is the one that I usually try to fit on the most on my list. So that being said, I heard a little bit of contention sometimes about this, and I am here for it. People will say dedicating a unit to deep strike allows you to actually get screened out more, since a lot of armies are trying to screen out. Instead, why don't you just take a truck so you can have a unit for more activations? And that's a fair point. You can make those 45 points up. That being said, sometimes you need, not 45, but you know what I'm saying. Sometimes you need more spare points for, let's say, that one Grot unit, or to actually upgrade a Grot unit to a Storm Boys unit. Why that matters is because for Bully Boys, you're already very, very elite and running out of units, but also having the deep strike ability instead of strategic reserves mean you have more ability to throttle, pressure, and counteract your enemy on specific flanks that are very important to you when you're playing Bully Boys, because a lot of the time, one flank's going to be holding the line and fighting the enemy's, natural expansion objective, and then we're going to be threatening the mid table with maybe you like to run Gaz in your Bully Boys or big unit of knobs, right? People know when they run to the mid table, that's where orcs want to be. So you're going to have the mid table and you're going to be fighting on another flank. Mega Knobs allow you, when they have the deep strike capability, to even threaten that mid table or the flank that maybe you're losing in a very quick, more like reactionary unit, right? In the military, they call this a QRF force, right? Quick response force. When it has deep strike instead of strategic reserves, the teleporter allows you to act as a QRF response. And that's why I like more of the teleporter than the truck, where you're already taking up space and sometimes getting clogged up with your other 2 or 3 trucks. Another good enhancement here, but not always being taken, is Ed Stompa, which we'll talk about a little bit more. It allows you to reroll wound rolls of 1, and if the unit is below starting strength, they're re-rolling wound rolls of 1, and if they're below half strength, you reroll the entire wound roll. That is good, but because it's circumstantial, as they actually have to be hurt already, which kind of isn't ideal for orcs, means you might even fail to get advantage of re-rolling those wound rolls of 1. So we'll talk about that. The biggest boss giving 2 wounds to an infantry war boss is not that interesting. If it could go on the Squig boss maybe, or a trike, whatever, but it's still not even that interesting. Then we have big Gob. So this allows you in the fight phase to select one enemy unit within engagement range, and they take a battle shock test, subtracting 1. That's really good if you want people not to do something like, Armor of Contempt, for example. So if you have 20 points left over, fills that good slot right there. I wish it was more than one unit taking the battle shock test, but it is what it is. Now, let's talk about how these archetypes and combos go together, right? So Bully Boyz and archetypes. Here's a couple combos that go with archetypes we spoke about earlier. So we have War Boss plus Pain Boys plus 20 boys. Enhancement, optional. So you could bring an enhancement on this unit, but it's not even really suggested. Just pay for what it is right there on the spot. Stratagems for this unit. Now, we talked about how there's not a lot of supporting strats for anything outside of knobs and mega knobs here. This is one of those units that you consider, hey, maybe I'll use grenades so that I can mortal wound somebody. This is a unit that you can spread out all over the battlefield and throw that stuff at people before you go into combat with your actual elite infantry type of unit. So straight, if you're going to use strats, grenades is one. Other core strats can be argued for as well, but that's what I would bring about that. This one's not only good in the Pain Boy archetype, but in really most Bully Boys lists, you can kind of nowadays find a War Boss, 20 boys, and Pain Boys. It's just a really good unit for bullying the mid-table, running around and tagging multiple enemy units that are either staged up, transports, vehicles, monsters, people that don't want to fall back, and just start really getting stuck in. So I do recommend that you at least try to take advantage of terrain so you can take cover, sometimes saves the storm bolters and other stupid things. All those little additional things you do to survive do matter when you're playing with 20 units of boys, right? So if you can get cover, get cover and take the 4 up instead of just simply the 5 up. That being said, a lot of the time it comes up to you to understand how do you manipulate a 20-man unit of boys to get the most value out of this unit. So it does require repetition and other supporting units possibly. So then we go into War Boss and Mega Armor with the teleporter as that enhancement that I talked about. You could argue for the 6, but they're already quite expensive. So the stratagems here is simply rapid ingress. A lot of the time, orc players are not taking advantage of rapid ingress as they should be. We're one of the few armies that doesn't care to do it as much as other people. A lot of other people are like, yeah, I'm always ready to rapid ingress, right? Orc players will make entire lists and not consider rapid ingressing once. Bully Boyz at least gives you more of that hindsight to want to do it because ta-da, you have, like what we spoke about earlier, the QRF unit, which is the quick response unit from the orcs. That's what your War Boss and Mega Armor unit is doing. Like we said, we seen earlier, though, teleporter specifically for the War Boss and Mega Armor. So you can't argue for any other units. Therefore, even if you don't like Mega Knobs that much, having just one unit for that reason is very important. I cannot stress this enough. When you're playing Bully Boyz, you got to consider you're a little bit slow. You're already pretty elite on units. You don't want to take too much damage if you don't have to. Have a unit that can deep strike, ingress, play the game in that kind of reactionary way is beneficial to you as an orc player, right? Then we have the Beast Boss on foot, 10 Beast Snagger Boys. A lot of the time people wouldn't consider this before. They were going strictly knobs, mega knobs, knobs, mega knobs. Nowadays, you can make an argument for the Beast Boss on foot. He's excellent choice in Warhorde. He's excellent for 80 points. Devastating wounds are awesome. Beast Snagger Boys make that good break point when they get to strength 6. Therefore, they could be argued for a lot of different matchups as well. Plus, you already want the truck to do secondaries for you, for example. The enhancement on here is Ed Stompa. That's where something has to already be hurt, like we talked about, to be diminished to reroll the ones. You could argue that maybe a truck will help you do that by running in and doing good old-fashioned tank shock, right? Then you have stratagems that you want to consider here. Heroic, going to ground, and more basic stratagems, but you cannot consider grenades because they don't have grenade keyword, just so you know. Next is SWAT teams. So SWAT teams is something that I talk about on Warhorde a lot because it's a truck-centric sort of, detachment. Bully Boyz have a lot of trucks too, but they also have a lot of excuses to bring 5-man units of knobs or even, unleaderless units of mega knobs. Therefore, SWAT teams could be argued for. Plus, I'm really in favor of flash kits. So for the example I've given, 2 units inside of 1 truck, In this case, of course, it's going to be knobs, most likely with the war boss. But like I said, you could argue even just no character with your knobs and mega knobs now, because you can already reroll hits on the wall. You know, but for the most part, flash kits are really, really exceptional right now in Pariah Nexus. A lot of strong armies are even T3. Having those guns is really important. Having the ability to pop lethals and having sustain so you can hurt something. That way, for example, when you're trying to go with Endstopper, you can actually re-roll their ones is really good for you too. So SWAT teams are great for Bully Boys. Last but certainly not least, Maz and Squig. So we talked about the paintball wall earlier. You know, there's an argument that Maz and Squighog Boys are ideal for the pain wall. They give the built-in 5 of feel no pain, and they really love having another turn of a 5-up invuln. This is another unit that can actually put out mortal wounds with their bomb squigs. Of course, they're not taking any enhancements. So Squighog Boys can also be brought in as an ingress unit from reserves if you're scared of getting shot off the table too much. And really push up the flank where, you know, something like 10-man unit of knobs or Gaz is threatening the mid table. Maybe your 20-man unit of boys threatening the mid table, holding it up. You could argue that Maz and Squig can come in from the side of the table if you're scared of getting, you know, alpha struck and you already paid for Zagra or commandos where you picked up the space and you know you can bring them in. You can start activating these units and have these 2 turns where you're already, I didn't take any damage turn 1 because I came in from the side of the table. Turn 2, I even have a 5-up invuln from the wall because my Mega Knobs with no leader went off into the side of the battlefield. Now they're fighting when you join their feel no pain. I'm gonna take a bunch of 5-up saves this turn. Next turn I get to actually get in combat, and then another wall is called. It's fantastic. So really consider Squighog Boys more of this, even though they do the most damage in Warhorde. This at least gets them a bit more because it's a wall. Now, much units and rankings for Warhordes. We're gonna not take too much time on this because it's pretty straightforward. But ideal units are Mega Knobs, Gaz, Knobs, Trucks, War Bosses, obviously, as they're enjoying the double wall. And the Trucks allow you to stage. 4 damage is really important. Gaz is not necessary for Bully Boys to work. Just saying that going forward, but he can really work because how can you not take advantage of lethals for 2 turns and having 4 damage? For proper units, this can be more spoken about a bit but longer. Flash kits are really good for Bully Boys. They're also cheap. They can skirmish very well. They don't get 2 turns of WAAAGH, but once they pop out, do their lethals and get stuck in once, their body's just getting in the way could be good enough. Even outside of that, their body's getting in the way in general for certain matchups. Maybe elite other infantry armies are trying to fight you. Maybe you got to block off a monster, whatever it may be. You can't let your knobs and mega knobs get countercharged too early in any of these matchups. Therefore, flash kits just being good at skirmishing and dying is great. Grots, because you need to farm CP. A pain boy is a good argument for, like we said, the pain wall, but he's not necessary for a Bully Boys attachment to work. You could just bring other units that are still taking advantage of Bully Boys and having the 5-up invuln. Boys are just straight up versatile for sticky objectives, so you can continue to move up the battlefield, play the mid table. Having great OC is important, and having something that makes you okay for secret missions so that it's harder to get scored on you is very important for you as well as the Bully Boys. So you might not take the Snaggas, and regardless, Snaggas are usually on a missile unit. They're running forward, dying with the Beast Boss. Having boys on the list allow you to maybe delay that a little bit. Big Snagger Boys can do that too. Just saying, battle line in general. That point was made in 4-4. Squigs, because you actually love having 2 walls for them for the most part, because 5-up invulns with the 5-up feel no pain feels a lot better than 1 turn of a 5-up invuln. Especially people will just time you and just be like, yeah, 1 turn only? Okay, I just got to block you for 1 turn and then I could shoot you with las cannons. This makes a world of difference. Plus, having strength, 6 dudes on top with lance makes a world of difference in my opinion, as things are getting tougher, even infantry along the meta. Good options are battle wagons, because sometimes you just got to stage up in the mid table, but you don't want to take those las cannons to the face early. You know, you're willing to run up, challenge people on their damage output, then disembark and take a little bit of leftover fire, but be in a good position in the mid table. Or you can just have it for later again in the game where it's still durable once everybody has fought and skirmished. Battle wagon is good for later in the turn in the games to run up and stand on an objective once all the firepower has been killed or tagged. Then you have the commandos. Commandos allow you to bring in something, like I said, Squighog Boys, bring in stuff from Strategic Reserve where you build a bunch of space already, because pressure is very important for orcs, and taking positioning on the table in Pariah Nexus is very important as well. But Bully Boyz are already expensive, so not really necessary that you bring them. Just saying that's an option. Zod for the same reason as Commandos. Too bad he's not a war boss, right? Bikers and trikes. So bikers at least are cheap if you don't have Storm Boys, which Storm Boys are super good for this detachment because you really need those things that are running around and skirmishing, really need stuff to score, really need stuff to just die for you and get in the way. Sometimes you need to run down an Eldar unit, stuff like that. Storm Boys are excellent, but bikers can do all those same things, just not as easily, not with enough versatility, but at least they have shooting and a little bit of AP and a little bit more durability. So if you own them, you don't have max Storm Boys, which are what I advise for most lists, then you bring, one biker unit. It can still be decent. A trike, in my opinion, though, just doesn't have enough damage output, doesn't have enough durability, stacking like it does in Warhorde, so I wouldn't bring it in this detachment either, unless you're really going for that Alpha Strike type of wall, which goes with your Mandos, your Zod, your trike, but you can see I put those as good options, not as the most ideal, as for the most part, Nexus doesn't play great for what you'd call a pain wall. I mean, sorry, it's not pain wall. It doesn't play great for a YOLO wall where you just run straight up at the battlefield and try to get stuck in, as you'll die and people will just score secret missions, and that's that. So not the best way to play it but it's good at maybe mid-sized table games or small games, or if you're a newer kind of orc player and you really just like to play YOLO and go fast and hard, you could definitely catch people off guard. You can definitely catch people in mid tables with the YOLO wall, but that being said, I still don't favor it. That's why those options for YOLO wall are more than the good options than anything else. Now, with that being said, we're going to give examples of the ones I do favor for my two more favorite archetypes. We're going to start off with the Bully Tide. Then we're going to go to the Pain Wall. So for this Bully Tide is pretty much like I said, where you're going with a good amount of battle line boys type units. This list and this archetype has existed even before Pariah Nexus, but now it's more toward the forefront. It's a lot of ways people are considering using this with 60 boys because they don't have that option or favoritism in the Green Tide anymore. So let's go over it real quick. It's 2 unit of beast bosses because, of course, having devastating wounds multiple times, acting even outside of the wall is amazing, but they're even more amazing during the wall. Having volume with strength 6 punches is fantastic. And sometimes it could be a reserve type of option unit as well. Gas, because 4 damage, 3 AP is super important on this meta right now with so much damage reduction, with so much tough units out there on the battlefield. Then you have 2 units of Pain Boys to go along 2 units of War Bosses with 2 20-man units of boys each, with 2 units of Beast Snag boys. Of course, those guys are going in their combinations. The boys are simply there to play the mid-table for long enough that people don't score any primary or even secondaries around that mid-table, because you're putting layers on there and threatening them with the wall as you go. While your Beast Boss type units may play more of the flanks, right? Then you have 3 trucks. Those are more the units that are moving and providing towards the flanks. Flash Kits, another unit you can consider for strategic reserves, but they can go on a transport, followed by 2 units of 5-man Flash Kits. I like breaking them down into 5-man units as well because they easier get out of transports, they more safely react and respond, and they don't get outmaneuvered so easily like a big 10-man unit does, right? Because they have huge 40 mil bases. 1 unit of Gretchen for CP farming, 2 Mega Knobs with twin kill saws, 2 units of Storm Boys, because that's the minimum you want for a Bully Boyz units. This list pretty much goes, I play the mid-table, I control my home natural expansive objective, because if you get close to me, I'm going to beat the crap out of you and have enough units that can beat the crap out of you. So this one really comes down to how are you going to cover the distance and stage to play the enemy's natural expansion just enough so that you can delay them, or for you to get punched through on one side of the objective and get to their home field as quickly as possible. As you can see, having Flash Kits is very important on this list. This list does come to one of my attentions from my boy Antonio Belio. So great job from him out there performing, and because I really just like this design, it's the most modern, proficient version of Bully Tide. So I suggest you give it a suggestion. You can tweak it, take out the snaggers, bring more boys. That's totally fine. You don't have this many Flash Kits, that's okay. Take them out. They're almost equivalent to boys in cost. Get rid of a truck, stuff like that. So bring more Gretchen if you want, sure. That being said, let's take advantage of, and then because of course also for Bully Tide, this is where you want to bring gas, where you can actually have enough units to take advantage of the lethals, right? And especially even the gas, the flash kits can take advantage of the lethal, because gas does give the lethals for 2 turns, meaning even if the unit doesn't have wall, themselves, doesn't mean they're not taking advantage of Makari's aura. Makari's aura is still on. That means flash kits can still have lethal punches for 2 turns. Then we go to the Pain Wall. So this was Colin McCade's type of list, this archetype. He comes with Mazrog's Crag Bag, Warboss and Boys, 2 units of Warboss and Megan Armor, 1 with Ed Stompas because you have points left over, 20 points, 3 trucks again, 3 units of Mega Knobs. This is one of those lists that actually has a Mega Knob unit with no leader. That's because they can actually act and respond outside of the leader by having the wall and having the strat to reroll hits on their own. That unit is to go right away, turn 2, draw out some trades, draw out some activations, and then hopefully from that you charge the counter charge whatever killed them, and you start leap padding and tagging everything else you can on the battlefield. That's really how that that kind of throwaway Mega Knob unit goes without a leader. Is he's actually there so that you can draw attention and get the game kind of going, get the trades kind of going. Squig Boys, because this list, everything on this list essentially has a 5 of Feel No Pain outside of the Storm Boys and the Grot. So just having a fat unit of Squig Boys that's like, well, you don't have 20, you don't have 20 knobs on this list. Well, you do have a fat unit of Squig Boys. Squig Boy unit wants to play the flank more or less if it can, but there's times you're just going to play the mid table, and that's a 20-man unit that's really matchup dependent. So that being said, this list does not have the teleport because everything's full throttle, too many options, too many choices, and everything's crashing on your lines at once, or at least some of the stuff is staging, like I said, and getting killed first, like the unit without a leader, but everything else is coming out on that secondary wall to really put the nail in the coffin. That's where the Squig Boys could come in with the first wall and be there for the second wall, as for the Mega Knobs do. Finish and clear things up, or vice versa. Nonetheless, this list is very, very durable, really fun to see, and a different yet really sound way to play the Bully Boys. So that being said, boys, get stuck in that. The Bully Boys still lives, and I suggest you give it a try with some of the archetypes. Hopefully I help break it down for you a little bit. Of course, don't forget core strats are important. Pressure is always important. Threatening the mid-table, but not standing there to be shot from all directions is also important as well, right? So make sure you have your important mid-table threats, things that want to kill and trade. But just know that playing the flanks hard and fast with Bully Boys and letting people know when you come to the middle, we gonna bang, bro, is where the game ends for them. So one thing to keep in mind is don't cross the wall because we knock your teeth out.